Support for this podcast comes from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative, connecting communities with the resources, infrastructure, and networks to ensure a vibrant local free press.
From KVPR in Fresno, this is Central Valley Daily. It's Tuesday, February 18th. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Coming up, how should you approach the art of poetry?
So I would say unplug and then find yourself, be yourself, and listen.
Our conversation with former U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo in just a few minutes. But first, today's headlines. Nationwide protests were held on Monday opposing policies from the Trump administration. Protesters used the President's Day holiday to call out what they say are, quote, anti-democratic actions by the Trump administration. Residents in Fresno also took part in the effort with a protest at City Hall. It's part of a slow but growing opposition to Trump's second term in office. Rallies have also been held against Trump's immigration policies in recent weeks. The demonstrations have also focused their attention on Elon Musk, the billionaire advisor to the president. After nearly a year, California's Department of Justice has filed felony charges against former Kern County supervisor Zach Scrivener. As KVPR's Carrie Klein reports, Scrivener is facing 5 felony charges from incidents dating back to last spring.
The allegations from Attorney General Rob Bonta are disturbing. They accuse Scrivener of illegally possessing 2 assault-style semi-automatic rifles. The guns were allegedly within reach of a child, and Scrivener and the child allegedly struggled over them. The DOJ's complaint also alleges Scrivener took a mind-altering drug, got into bed with a child, and touched them inappropriately. These charges follow an incident last April when Kern County Sheriff's deputies confronted Scrivener at his Tehachapi home. Sheriff Donnie Youngblood told the press days later that Scrivener had been stabbed after allegedly sexually abusing his own child. Scrivener's attorney did not immediately return a request for comment. In the past, he has denied any wrongdoing. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
State Senator Melissa Hurtado is aiming to strengthen bird flu surveillance in the valley, specifically through wastewater. KVPR's Carrie Klein also brings us this report.
Wastewater testing has become a routine way to monitor for viruses like COVID and RSV, but the state's wastewater surveillance network is incomplete. Hurtado's latest bill is called the Wastewater Surveillance Act. It aims to fill gaps in wastewater testing. The bill would establish at least 1 testing site in every county. It would also require counties to share that data with healthcare providers. The LA Times reports there are few wastewater testing sites in the San Joaquin Valley, and none at all in Tulare and Kings counties. Those are where most of the state's bird flu has been reported, in people and in cattle. For KVPR News, I'm Carrie Klein.
The city of Fresno may not have enough funding to protect renters against evictions. According to our newsroom partner Fresno Land, the city is facing a budget deficit of around $20 million. City Attorney Andrew Jans told council members this puts the city's eviction protection program in need of $500,000. That's so the program can operate through June. City staff plan to discuss options at the next city council meeting.
Join KVPR for an event with NPR senior White House correspondent Tamara Keith, Wednesday, February 26th at Fresno City College. Get an inside perspective on covering the White House for NPR at this in-person event. Tamara Keith grew up in Hanford before going on to cover world events and presidents for audiences nationwide. Seating is limited. RSVP for this free event online at kvpr.org/events.
And now to our main story. Poetry is a lyrical way of relating to the world, and who better to talk to about that than with our next guest. Joy Harjo was the U.S. Poet Laureate from 2019 to 2022 and was also the first Native American to hold the position. Joy is from Oklahoma and a member of the Muskogee Nation. Her work reflects her heritage and connection to the land. It often explores the themes of nature and social justice. She's also a storyteller at heart and a musician. Joy's coming to the San Joaquin Valley to speak about her work tomorrow. We caught up with her in recent days to learn about her background and what inspires her. Joy says she came to poetry because of how she was raised. Here she is explaining how the arts influenced her at a young age.
I think I've always been sound or voice oriented. And I grew up in my early years anyway, in a household of music, with my mother creating songs and singing, and some of the best musicians in the Tulsa area, jamming in our house. That's how I came to poetry. And my mother also loved poetry. She grew up with a one-room schoolhouse situation, and she said they had to memorize poetry. And so she still had those. She would recite those poems, and she loved musical language, and that's where I first got interested in poetry. But you don't set out as poetry is never considered as a career, as a way of moving about in the world to make a living. But she planted that love of poetry.
Yeah, I know we here at KVPR can appreciate that as audio journalists, very aware of the power of the spoken word and the impact it can have on people. I'm curious, do you feel like a poem can have a deeper impact when you're reading it out loud instead of reading it silently?
I think so, because the poetry is it's an oral art, an art of orality. And, way back in all of our many traditions and our many cultural traditions in this country and in the world, poetry always, goes back towards music. It's usually accompanied by music, or it's part of the roots go back to music. So, yes, poems are, they're meant to be read aloud. It's a whole different sonic experience.
Joy, I know you're a member of the Muskogee Nation out of Oklahoma, and you mentioned growing up near Tulsa. I'd love to learn how you think your Native heritage impacts the work that you do.
Well, I think we're the indigenous people in this country are much closer to that sense of orality. And I remember when I was working on my last memoir, I think Poet Warrior, I came to realize as I was writing that, I went to Indian school in Santa Fe, and I realized as I was thinking about those times that most of us were within a generation of orality. So that orality is very much a part of my awareness when I write poetry. But it's like we all come from cultures, and so it influences me, coming out of the landscape and the culture I come from, definitely has an impact.
When you're beginning to write a poem, do you have a specific routine or any particular habits that help you get into the right headspace?
Not really. I mean, I like being able to just get up without thinking and having to do anything and just write, and then go back in the afternoon and look at, and then revise. That's my preferred routine, but my life generally doesn't always run by routine. I travel, and usually it just depends. Every poem, every project is different, but what I've noticed is there has to be some kind of seed of emotional intention for, even if I'm doing a poem that's a kind of an assignment, but there has to be that in there. That's the kind of the heartbeat, the heart of it.
And before I let you go, Joy, do you have any advice for up-and-coming poets or someone who's interested in the art form?
The best advice I can give is that you have to do the work, because a lot of people like to talk about it. But sitting down and doing the work, and I think it's become harder with social media and the internet for people to disconnect, because to write poetry or to create, you've got to go into a space that is the opposite, kind of the opposite of what you find in those places. I find that the internet, and which they're useful, and social media, of course, it's useful, but there's a kind of static with it. And what happens when you listen to the radio or podcasts, or, when you're doing engaged listening and engaged watching, and it's important to be connected with yourself, with the world, the natural world, the world of immense imagination, and have a clear channel. So I would say unplug and then find yourself, be yourself, and listen.
That was my conversation with Joy Harjo. She was the 23rd U.S. Poet Laureate. Joy will be speaking about her work tomorrow in Fresno as part of the San Joaquin Valley Town Hall Speaker Series. And that's today's show. Today's episode was produced by Jonathan Linden and KVPR with support from the Central Valley Journalism Collaborative. I'm Elizabeth Arkalian. Find the latest local news anytime at kvpr.org.
Each morning, it's a new opportunity, a chance to start fresh. Up First from NPR makes each morning an opportunity to learn and to understand. Choose to join the world every morning with Up First, a podcast that hands you everything going on across the globe and down the street, all in 15 minutes or less. Start your day informed and anew with Up First by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts.